Welcome everyone to the regular scheduled Walpole Select Board meeting of June 6th. It is now the hour after 7, our regular scheduled time, and so we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone. Over this past weekend, we held a town election. I'd like to congratulate Mark Gallivan on being elected to his fourth term on the Select Board. And I'd also congratulate and thank all of the residents who ran in the election. It's important that we continue to encourage residents to run for offices within our town, and more importantly, to come out and vote and participate in our town elections. Last night, the Select Board, we held a meeting to reorganize the board. I've been elected to serve as chair. Mark Gallivan has been elected to serve as vice chair, and Ben Barrett has been elected to serve as a clerk for the upcoming year. All right, and we are now ready to get into this evening's agenda. First in order is the appointment of Nicholas Cambosa to the position of firefighter paramedic. So Chief, would you come up and introduce this candidate?
Good evening and thank you. This evening we're before you with a candidate for firefighter paramedic, Nicholas Campobasso. Nick is a 2016 graduate of Walpole High School. He's also a graduate of Norwich University and has a degree in criminal justice. Nick came to us 2 years ago inquiring as to how to get onto the fire department and what he needed to do. And we instructed him that he needed to become an EMT and a paramedic. And he has done that very aggressively over the last year and a half. And he is almost at his paramedic level. He just finished up his ride time with us, and he'll be sitting for his exams in a few weeks. And without that, any further ado, Nick Campobasso.
Nick, if you wouldn't mind coming up and telling us a little bit about yourself.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
As Chief mentioned, I was born and raised in Walpole, went to Walpole High. After I graduated, I went to Norwich University, which is a military school in Vermont. I did 4 years up there, ROTC. I also played football. Got my bachelor's in criminal justice with a minor in sociology. After that, I went to the Reserve Police Academy, became a police officer in Nahant. I've been there about a year and a half, and shortly after I started, I decided I liked the medical side of the job more, so that's when I contacted Chief Bailey and went and put myself through EMT and then paramedic school, which I recently graduated. I also was fortunate enough to be able to do my ride time with the fire department, built relationships with all the guys there, and went to understand like how the daily operations work and stuff like that. So.
Wonderful. Nick, I'd like to congratulate you and welcome you to the town of Walpole. I think growing up in town and all of your significant background in public service is a great addition to our fire department. Does anyone else on the board have anything to add?
I would just say good luck.
Thank you.
And Jim?
Yeah, I mean, just great to have you coming on board. Good luck. You got a great resume, and I'm real impressed with the fact that you came and asked what is it going to take to become a paramedic firefighter here in the town, and then went and did the things that you had to do. So great job. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
With that, Ben, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to appoint Nicholas Campobasso to the position of firefighter paramedic.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we have a vote, 5-0-0. Welcome.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief. The second item on our agenda is a discussion of the request of Dimitri Deitch in the regards of 979 Main Street and the proposal for installation of scaffolding on the sidewalks. Dimitri, would you mind coming up?
How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
My name is John Davis, construction manager for representing Walpole Development Partners, LLC, who currently own 979 Main Street in Walpole. They purchased a building about a year ago. Was it about a year ago? Yeah, about a year ago they purchased a building, previously approved for commercial space on the first floor, 3 additional levels with apartments above it. Being in the construction trades, they brought me on to manage the project and to run the project. going through the plans and looking over it, we absolutely need to scaffold the entire building in steel scaffolding, similar to what you have at the, is it Blackburn Hall, I believe, that's currently under construction? Very similar to that. The issue at hand is the Glenwood Avenue on that northwest side of the street, going down the street on the right-hand side. What we would need to do is we need to scaffold that side of the street. We've had discussions with Mr. Johnson, Mr. Crowley, on how to do this. We've come up with a couple different solutions. Originally, we wanted to make the scaffolding go up and have the pedestrians cross on the other side of the road. There was a little pushback on that, so we've come to the resolution that we need to place jersey barriers on the edge of the curbing. Nothing is in the street. And similar to, I provided some photos on a small handout. Similar to what's there, that photo represents the jersey barrier in the street. Our jersey barrier will be on this curbing. And then the scaffolding will be erected from that and fully enclosed with a fire retardant barrier on the street side so no debris can fall off. This would allow us to fence off the front of the building. There would be pedestrian access, would be able to head down Glenwood Avenue, and then there's a, right to the bottom of that, there's a handicap ramp where they could exit, and they could go on their way, either cross the street or go around to the back of the parking lot. But this is the only way at this point that we see that we can safely do this project.
Right, and I appreciate for your brief overview of what's up next for this project. It's very exciting that this building will have a reuse, and I look forward to the progress. There is some safety concerns. I know some board members have some questions concerning the project. Obviously, pedestrian access, handicap accessible access, and as I reviewed it and with thinking about the further plans, I'm really concerned about in the winter and the plows and the snow, whether we can put in an inspection plan for the scaffolding so that it would be conducted on a regular basis. But I'll open it up to other board members for other thoughts on the matter. David, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, by looking at the plan, it looks to me as though the walkway for people underneath the scaffolding is about 3.5 feet in width, correct?
Correct, about 38 inches. It'll be.
Okay. And what's the overall width of the sidewalk? Is it the same 6 foot 6 inches?
It's 60 inches overall.
60 inches,
Yeah.
so 5 feet?
5 feet.
5 feet.
Yeah.
So look, I'm no expert on this stuff and don't pretend to be, but 5 feet for a base of scaffold just feels very narrow to me. Obviously, the broader the base of anything, the safer it is. And so I'd like you to talk a little bit about the 5 feet width of the scaffold and the height of it, and how we're confident that that's going to be a safe setup for the scaffold.
Absolutely. So a standard scaffolding that you see like across the street there, and that thing, that's a 60-inch scaffolding, right? That's a standard scaffolding. This type of setup is a scaffolding that's almost a modular scaffolding. It's almost, you kind of say it's like an erector set, right? So it has pins and pipes that erect up. The scaffolding is installed by a scaffolding company, bonded, insured. They've given us a design. They will install it, and then it's pinned periodically as it goes up on the building at that point. It's OSHA approved. It's a standard scaffold, and you see it. In that picture that I gave you, it's the same scaffolding you see in that picture that they've used. It's very, very common. There's two types of scaffolding. There's a modular, and then there's also a steel scaffolding, which is frames. They call them, frames and braces. Frames and braces will be used on the front and the rear, but on this side, we originally wanted to use frames and braces, but that would allow us to have to install the protective jersey barrier would have to be installed in the street. And the fire department was concerned that we would narrow down the street slightly. So we agreed to have the jersey barrier placed on top of the curbing, which will allow the top of the scaffolding to be placed on top of the jersey barrier, and we'll go up from there.
And so that was another one of my questions, looking at the picture. So does the scaffolding, is it actually sitting on top of the jersey barrier?
Correct. It's pinned on top of the jersey barrier.
Pinned on there.
And also, it's pinned to the building as it goes up.
Because one of the thoughts that is in my head, and again, I'm I'm not an expert on this, if this is a dumb question, I apologize, but I think about a snowplow coming through there and the scaffolding being right on the edge of the street, and what would happen if the snowplow contacted the Jersey barrier? What
Well,
might that,
It's sitting on the curb, so it's sitting on the curb. The Jersey barrier is tapered, right? So it's tapered at the base, so the bottom of a Jersey barrier is about 20 inches, 22 inches, and it tapers up to about 8 inches at the top. So if a plow, if it, technically, you would have to jump onto the curb to push those Jersey barriers out of the way. If it did hit the Jersey barrier and knock a Jersey barrier away, it wouldn't allow the scaffolding to fall because it's placed on other pinpoints on the Jersey barrier and also pinned against the wall of the building as it goes up.
so let's say we have a snowstorm, it's in the middle of the night, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, the plows come through, nobody's there to know whether they hit the thing or not. Do you have any kind of an inspection process the next day that,
Well, I'm the site manager, I'll be there on a daily basis, so obviously, we're constantly checking it, looking at it, we're not gonna let it go. I mean, to be honest with you, at this point, right now, we need to fast track this, because we need, basically what happens now is we have some masonry that needs to be put on the building, some brickwork. We don't wanna get into a situation where we're up against the weather and we have to scaffold and we have to close it in and heat it. So we need to, get this to a point. I mean, we were already at the point that we thought that we would be in a different state right now. We thought that this would be framed. The project's been approved, the permit's been applied for, the permit's been paid for. This is what's holding up the project at this point, So I feel somewhat confident that if we get approval, we get the scaffolding up, we get the demolition going, we can get it framed, and we can get the brickwork done, and then we can pull the scaffolding down. Hopefully we can get this thing down by December. That's would be my goal.
yeah, because I had understood that it was going to be at least 10 months.
Well, it's 10 months overall construction, not 10 months of the scaffolding.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
10 months. So once we get the outside closed in, we get
Yep.
the siding on there, scaffolding comes down. We're paying rental on the scaffolding. There's no advantage for us to leave it up there. It's about $10,000 a month, right? So every month that scaffolding sits there, it's $10,000 that goes out the window, right? So we want to get it up and get it down as quickly as possible.
And I'm totally sympathetic to that. And by the way, I want you to do this project. I think
Thank
it's a
you.
good project, and I'm supportive of the project itself, so don't misread what I'm
No,
saying here.
it's a safety concern.
I just, I hear the stories of some of these disastrous things that have happened in Boston in the not too recent past.
Just had one happen in North Attleboro, probably in that windstorm maybe 2.5 months ago.
So what I want to make sure of is that whatever we're doing here is absolutely safe, that proper inspections are in place, after an event like a snowstorm, to make sure that, the plows haven't hit it or something like that, and there should probably be periodic inspections in place anyway, just to make sure that the thing isn't getting weak in some fashion.
I'm sure we can work it out with Mr. Crowley if he wants
Yeah.
to, come inspect it. We can do something with that. The scaffolding company installs it, scaffolding companies it's the highest rated insurance, it's the highest workers' comp of anything. People that install scaffolding for a living.
Yeah.
So the safety with them is, paramount, They take it very seriously and we take it very seriously,
Okay.
yeah.
So those are really the questions I have for you, and I'm sure board members may have other questions, but Ally, if I could just, I would like to hear from the fire chief, the police chief, the building inspector, and I'd like to hear them talk about the points I'm raising and how comfortable they are with what they're seeing. Because ultimately, I've got to defer to the wisdom of the experts, but I really want to hear that this is a safe thing we're doing.
Absolutely.
But again, I'm totally for your project, and, I do want to see it go forward.
And again, on another note, it's the same process that you go to Boston, you go to Brookline, you go to any major city, major town, it's the same process, right? They all do this, right? This isn't something that we've dreamed up. I mean, that picture was taken in the North End in Boston. That's where that picture came from.
Which is
right?
where some of these troubles have
Where
happened.
some of the narrowest streets are, right? And, and they're going up, we're only going up 4 levels.
It may be totally safe, it looks really sketchy to me, I gotta be
I,
honest with you.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ally.
Thank you, Jim. Any other comments to be made? Then at this point, Jim Crowley, would you mind coming up and speaking a little bit of this? I know you've been working with them on constructing this plan and the letters and all the stipulations that we've laid out already.
Yeah, so the process will be, again, the footprint of the building has put them out. They've had multiple meetings that both us, the fire department and police department been involved in to get the safest what they can come up with for it. On this case, it's going to be the staging, which will be on Glenwood. The building itself is going to be completely wrapped in staging. They do need, again, the select board's permission for Glenwood, and the rear of the building as well as part of that is on our property. The staging won't be on the rear of the property, it'll just be the fence that's on the rear. Again, with this staging, it'll go with the building as it rises. So again, this will be set up as a two-story process that was going to be bolted to the building. And as the building rises, the staging rises with it. We are putting it on the side, they are putting it on the sidewalk. And from our process, the way it works is it falls under two categories, the building code and also OSHA code. So OSHA will be involved in this if anything does, God forbid, goes wrong, or they'll inspect it. The process through our department will be, once the staging goes in, we get a report back from an engineer, their engineer of record, once the staging is built and ready before they start doing any work, to say that it's done to code and is secured to the building. Our process then, the way we have run it, is every 2 weeks we get a construction report as the job goes on. So every 2 weeks the staging will be getting inspected, and if in the middle of those 2 weeks we get an extra tier of staging, we'll require a report from the engineer on that as well to make sure it's secure. To the issue of the snow on Glenwood, we already have, Diamond Builders already have signed a letter with us agreeing that they are going to maintain Glenwood and the sidewalks while the staging is erect and on the property. So it'll be under their pies to get the streets and the sidewalks clean if there is any snow. If it comes to where we do have vehicle impact, the way the process we'll be using is, if we get a report of a car striking the staging, the entire project will be put on pause until we get the scaffolding back to full strength, and we get a report again from the engineer saying it's back to full strength, and then we'll reopen the process again and get the job going back.
Jim, do you have any follow-up questions on this now that Jim's explained it a little bit more?
You know, I mean, what you've just said makes total sense to me. So I don't think I have any follow-up questions. You know, I'm glad to hear they're actually going to do the snow plowing, because that means they'll be, you know, paying close. They'll know best where the scaffolding is and all that. There's still the question of what happens if they hit it, because regardless of who actually is doing the snow plowing, you could hit those barriers, and I just would be concerned that they knock something out of whack. So I just want to make sure that there's appropriate checks and balances here that say, look, you know, anytime there's any kind of big equipment moving around those scaffolds, that we're confident that those scaffolds are not going to have some kind of an issue.
Yeah, we'll get the reports once it's installed, and again, if it does get struck or hit by either a car driving wrong, coming around Glenwood, or if a delivery truck hits it, then we put a pause on the entire job, and it's up to the developer to get their engineer, get the staging back to full strength, and get a report saying that it's back to full strength and is structurally secure. And then once that happens, then we'll inspect it and then release the stop work order basically, and let them back into the buildings, keep working to make sure it's on that. If we don't get reports and we find out it happened, then we shut everything down and we go through fines, the process that basically they're going to be punished for not cooperating with us, which obviously hopefully won't happen. But if we don't get told that something struck the building or a plow hit the building, we'll pause everything, put a freeze on the permit until we're satisfied that it's back up to full strength and everybody's safe.
You just made me think of something else. Have we worked with this developer before?
Yes, we've had.
What's our experience been?
We haven't gone to this extent of building. We've dealt with them on 2 houses on Arlington and Eastover in this town, and I've dealt with them in my previous job in Brookline as well. That's why, being honest, he works with us, but I just want to get everything. This is a big project that I don't believe they've done this size before, so that's why we're kind of going through this process. We want to make sure they know what they're getting into and we know what we're dealing with, that we have the town covered, that again, the onus is on them to keep up with us and keep everybody safe.
Yeah. You've been satisfied with working with them in the past?
We get there.
Okay. I'm good, Ally.
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. You mentioned deliveries. How often will Glendale Road need to be shut down, or how will the big deliveries of materials work?
So right now, as you see with your plan, they have actually access to 8 spots that's deeded to the property. The ones directly behind the building, I believe they're going to use for their dumpsters. The other spot is where deliveries have to happen. So right now, Glenwood is not being closed for any deliveries whatsoever. They have to park in those spots, unload the trucks, and take them to the building. If they do decide to use Glenwood, then they have to come, notify us, get the police department for stoppage, and make sure they're allowed to use Glenwood, DPW, that they're approved to shut down for any period of time. But right now, our main goal is to keep all deliveries coming in and utilising the parking spots that are there.
So they'll go down Glenwood, then they'll pull in,
They'll pull
so
in.
they're off the road. they don't
Exactly, so
block-
they
okay.
own the 4 spots directly behind the building.
Yep.
They also have 4 to the left that runs parallel to Glenwood.
Okay.
So our main goal is that if the delivery truck comes in there, it parks in those 4 spots and they unload and carry everything basically physically into the building. Or if the dumpsters aren't on the rear spots, then they can unload from there straight into the building.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Jim, I appreciate your explanation. I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable about the scaffolding and the inspections, but saying that the onus is on them to report to us if something's going on, that does make me a little weary. I really would like to make sure that we're checking in with them on a very periodic basis for this. Again, every question leads to another question. When we were talking about deliveries, I had that thought, but I'm also thinking about parking. I know local businesses have been reached out to concerning this project, you know, having access to Glenwood, pedestrian access, but I'm also concerned about parking. So how many workers do you anticipate to be on the job site at a given time? Because there's only 8 spots deeded to the property, so that could also be a lot of extra vehicles in that area, and parking is tight already there.
So the policy that we have in place for the project is that all the employees of the prime contractors, we're gonna ask them to park in the municipal parking spaces behind the fire station. You know, it's a short walk, you know. Mostly all the equipment and tools are stored on site, so it's not like they have to every day come with their tools. They set their tools up, and that's where there'll be some spots in the back that we'll have. We're gonna probably leave for the delivery area behind the building until we have 4 spots. We'll probably leave a couple of those spots open for, you know, for plumber or electricians to come and go quickly, you know.
Do you have an estimate of how many people on site? I know that depending on what's going on, it can range
It
greatly.
can vary, I would say at a minimum, 7 people. It could be as much as 15.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it for Jim. Chief Bailey, would you mind speaking? Deputy
Paul.
Yep, Paul, thank you for coming up.
Good evening. Good evening. So we did meet in multiple times with the applicant and the building department. Our concern was the Jersey barrier sitting in the roadway, and if it was struck, it would cause damage to the scaffolding, and if anybody was on top of it, that was a main concern of ours. It's already a very narrow road. It actually narrows down deeper as it gets further down into Glenwood. So we're concerned about that. Met with them, discussed it, and they've came back with the proposal on the sidewalk. That keeps everything off the roadway, providing safer access for the residents coming up from 1034 East Street, which was much busier now than it ever was. We're cautiously concerned with the way it's set up right now, but it's the better option than what was presented earlier. So we can deal with that. They'll also be required to submit to us a NFPA 241 compliant fire and life safety report, which will detail all of the activity on that, what will happen if there's an emergency, what we'll do to keep the site safe, and we'll update that as needed as the project progresses. So we'll be on top of that project very regularly. Well, so I can answer any questions if I didn't.
Any questions from the board, Jim?
So, just in terms of getting apparatus in there, and you're right, it narrows down to like 15 feet at some point. So it's already very narrow for getting your equipment in there. Do you foresee any issues at all now that you're even more, because you've got now something on the right-hand side you got to pay a lot of attention to if you're bringing your equipment in there. Do you see any issues with getting, you know, especially the big stuff in there?
As long as they stay up on the curb and don't come down onto the street, we should be okay. That was, again, our main concern, that impingement on the street would reduce that and make it much more narrower for us to get down. It's a tight street anyways, so we'll work with it as need be, but we're comfortable enough with what they presented to work with and get our apparatus down there, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you, Ally.
Chief Kelleher, do you want to address any concerns with this plan?
As Deputy Barry just said, the plan that we have in front of us now is much better than it was before. We can get police cars wherever. It was more about access for their apparatus, access for plow equipment, and people making the turn down that street where it's narrow. This is a better option than it was. It's the same width of the street that it is right now. Our concern with pedestrian access as well, but now that that's going to be open, the way things are set up, that's going to be all right with us. Obviously, I had some questions for Jim about how this would work out, protecting the site from the pedestrians, I mean, other way around, I should say, but it sounds like that's all going to be contained within the scaffolding, so nothing's going to be falling on people walking underneath. So aside from that, the handicap ramp will be there, the crosswalks will be there, there's enough sidewalk in front of the building. Overall, we're good with what's going on right now. And we'll monitor it too. We're always out and about, so if something were to be up with it or looked out of whack, we'll certainly be in touch with the building department to make sure that they're aware of anything we may see, so. But that's all we have on our end, unless there's anything you would all like to hear from
And
me.
I know part of the requirements were also police detail if needed
Correct.
for such deliveries. Do we also have signage for sidewalk closed, must cross sidewalk?
We can access that, yeah. We'll work with DPW to make sure we have that. When that were to be closed, that we make sure that those sidewalks stay closed while that's happening, but
I think it's going to be important because it is such a narrow one-way street and it's such a heavily pedestrian way to some of our public parking.
Yep.
I could see that people would not bother crossing over but would go along the Jersey barriers. And being that it's narrow, if someone crosses down that road, it's quite a dark kind of part of the road just because the buildings are taller there. That would concern me, especially in the evening. I'm not sure how the lighting is.
yeah, it's
down
probably
there
fairly
at
dark,
night,
yeah.
whether they're temporary lighting or something to better light the way. There's many members that will say walk from the restaurants in downtown down there at night when it's dark. And I really want to make sure that we have signage saying this is closed, you must cross here.
Yep.
And walk on the sidewalk. That would be a concern that I think we should add that in as well.
Makes sense to me, absolutely.
All right, thank you
That's all
so
I
much.
have. Thank you.
Thank you.
And do we have anyone else? Rick, did you want to speak to this tonight?
No, not really. We really don't have anything from a public works perspective to add. Again, the biggest concern with DPW is the snow removal. I'd like to know what their plan is, if they're gonna have somebody on site from first flake to last flake, because it's not gonna work otherwise. It's a very narrow road, so any snow that's pushed is gonna be pushed against that Jersey barrier, which could compromise weight-wise on the bottom. So I'd like to know what their plan is for that. One additional concern is any damage that may potentially be caused to the sidewalk and/or road area. For that, we should probably seek a bond. But beyond that, Public Works doesn't really have a lot of comment, and we will work closely with police and fire to get the proper signage out there.
All right, thank you so much. Did you want to come back and address some of these questions that have come up?
Excuse me. So as far as the snow removal, we were gonna enter into a contract with BC Murphy, local landscaper. He does a lot of work in town. He handles the cooperative bank across the street, so he's around. I think he's more than able to handle that, to keep that clean. And damage to the sidewalk, we've submitted a bond for review. We'll put a performance bond in there, surety bond, sorry, for the sidewalk. I believe the sum is $40,000.
Jim, did you have anything to add?
Sure, just a couple of items I wrote down here. So in addition to the May 1st memo from the building commissioner, we'll add some signage in there, with sidewalks closed. Rick wants a snow removal plan to be approved by DPW director, and I started to write failure to adhere to the plan will result in some type of suspension of the permits or something like that. No offense, just to hold your feet to the fire. And then the town engineer had these notes this afternoon. He's not here. Street opening permit with the usual required insurance and conditions. Added provision about the snowplow removal. In place normally is a $10,000 street opening bond. He suggests possibly doubling that and to make sure that we have the surety in place to cover the curb, the sidewalk, the milling, the paving on Glenwood that may need to occur. And he'd asked the board to establish a value that would allow us to proceed going forward with this. So I don't think we have those recommendations specifically from Carl, but if the board would like, my suggestion would be, if you're comfortable tonight, we can come back, we can, myself, building commissioner, Rick, can put together kind of an MOA in place that the contractor will adhere to. He signs off on, we can present it to the board for approval at your next meeting, if you're okay with that. Does that sound acceptable to the board?
I am. The last question I had, do you have any concerns with the municipal parking of 7 to 15 workers? I'm not familiar with that municipal parking, how much it's used in the day, how open it is. Do you have any concerns with that?
I
as
don't,
being-
I believe they meant the parking out back here.
Yes.
And I generally don't. I mean, there's open spaces
Okay.
back there, yeah.
So just one thing with regard to the bond. The bond should be similar to what the board put into place for Pulte, whereas it doesn't expire in 1 year. Okay, so it should be in effect until the project is complete and the board, DPW, and the rest of the town is satisfied that the project has been completed within the terms.
Thank you, Rick. So I just want to look to the board and see, are we comfortable with moving this for our next meeting? I think we have set for July.
So you have the 20th, if you'd like, or the July 18th.
Is there a reason why we're not going to approve it tonight? Was there a
I think what Jim
concern
was
that?
saying that we need to add some of these concerns into.
So
Sure.
what, my
Can we make our
recommendation is,
approval conditional on, go ahead.
oh, you could certainly do that.
Yeah.
Conditional upon approval of these conditions, and myself and the chair review and sign.
I mean, that's what I would recommend unless there's a bigger concern.
I'd agree with that as well. I'd agree with Glenn. I think we can say pursuant to the conditions listed by the TA and town engineer, and that the two of you can sign off on it.
Okay,
fine
I'm
with
comfortable with
And
that.
then we can move forward, you know?
Yeah, it's causing a lot of delays
Yeah.
at this point.
Well, we'd also like to get it out of there before the snow flies if possible, right? So you said we're looking for that, so
We're all on the same
we'll look
page.
for that too, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like where we are supportive of this project, we're, excited to see what will happen there and get it moving. So, Ben, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. So I'll make a motion to approve the request of Dimitri Deitch to install the pedestrian staging on the sidewalk adjacent to 979 Main Street during the project construction, subject to the applicant adhering to all conditions outlined in the letter dated May 1st, 2023, and pursuant to the conditions listed by Town Administrator Jim Johnson just now, and the town engineer's email, and, subject to the approval and signature of the board chair and town administrator.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 500.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck.
Appreciate it, guys.
Good luck.
All right, we have now moved, it's past the time for our open forum, so if anyone is here, I'd like to open that up and come to the podium and speak.
Hello,
Hello?
Mark, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd like to praise, I'm Katie Turco Abadi. I am an election worker, and that's why I'm here tonight. I'd like to praise the town clerk and her staff on another greatly run election. They truly do a fantastic job. They work so hard to make sure everything's done perfectly, and they do it every time. A little background about why I'm speaking to you tonight, because I'm not the only one here who works the polls. I have been working the polls for over 30 years. I've done every job from greeting to super warden. I'm here tonight to address an increasingly difficult situation that we have with our local elections. The Saturdays have become a problem. It's increasingly difficult to get both workers and voters to attend. Spring Saturdays are packed with events and commitments. If it's a nice day, people are doing yard work, it's hard to pull them away. They're taking day trips, they're opening up their second homes, they're going to cookouts, weddings, showers. You add graduation to the mix, and it's a real problem. As far as workers go, the polls are not a job where we want to retrain everyone each election. It's good to have a few new people, but the core coming back so that they know what's going on and everything runs smoothly. And that's become so hard to get people to come to the Saturday elections. We have people that will work every election, but when it comes to these elections, they're always busy. We have a lot of last-minute cancellations, too. And I don't need to tell you how the turnout was this past election. It was, I think, the lowest I've ever seen in the time that I have spent at the polls. So I come to you tonight respectfully requesting that the board consider looking into making a charter change for the sole reason of amending the local elections to take place on a Tuesday. A lot of towns around us do this, and personally, I feel that it will help us. I think that it will be much easier to get people to stop on their way to work, or their way home from work, or to buzz in than it is to get them on a Saturday in June. So I'll leave it up to you guys to investigate, and I would just like to say that if I can help in any way, if you have any questions, if you want to talk about it, I'm glad to expand on it, but I really would like you to contemplate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Does anyone, come on up, Josette.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Josette Burke, Precinct 4, excuse me, in FinCom, and I have been a clerk at the polls for over 2 decades. And like Katie, you are all families at one stage or another, and you go between the commencements, the high school graduations, the first communions, not counting sports. And Saturdays are really difficult. It's really challenging to get the consistency of people to come in. And unfortunately, we had one lady come in that volunteered for 2 hours because that's all she could give, and we needed it. And I really think that, yes, there has to be a charter change for it, but in consideration, the 152 ballots that were in the precinct I worked, that it's really a disgrace. And I think if families have the opportunity to, exactly as Katie said, I'm 100% in support of her. If the families have the opportunity to vote during a regular weekday, I would be shocked if the numbers didn't come up. And I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I definitely feel it's something that, especially after the abysmal showing that we got this weekend, that something has to be done. And you're all smart people, so go forward with all your knowledge and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Josette. Is anyone else here who would like to come up and speak during open forum? All right. Well, thank you, Josette and Katie, for coming. This is certainly something to think about. As you know, charter reviews are quite extensive and can be very costly. The turnout of 9%, I think, is what we had, was deplorable. I would hope that, residents of Walpole would come out and vote in the local election because it is very important.
Ally, if I could.
Absolutely.
And I know we don't generally respond at open forum, so I'm going to try not to do that, but I probably will a little bit. I think we should put an agenda item on our next agenda so we can actually really discuss this and vote on it. And Jim, what I think we ought to do is be thinking about the fall town meeting and, what do we need to be doing in terms of a warrant article to affect the charter to make that change. And it just seems fairly obvious to me that we should be moving the day from Saturday to Tuesday. And I can't tell the number of people who say to me, why do you have elections on Saturday? I mean, we're the only town that does this. So I think it would be important for us to tee it up for our next meeting and have real discussion, take a real vote. Jim, again, be prepared to help us through with the town meeting kind of things. The other thing I wanted to say is I think in addition to that, and maybe a separate agenda item, I think we need to talk about how we drive awareness. I don't I don't know that it's that people are really that apathetic, although there's probably an element to that, but I think a lot of people just plain didn't even know there was an election this weekend. And so, I'd like us to brainstorm as a board and say, how can we drive the awareness? And, we do all the normal things, but especially on day of, I standing at Fisher holding a sign and watching all those cars go by on Gold Street and nobody coming in. You wonder if you had a big flashing sign up that says, election today, vote, please vote, or something like that. Would that remind a bunch of people? And so I'd kind of like to see us talk about that as well, so that it's not just about the day, but also what do we do on the day and even leading up to the day to drive awareness in a more proactive way and beyond the things that we normally do. It just seems warranted. I mean, a 9.1% turnout was just, it was really bad. It's really bad. And I just could conclude by thanking all of the poll workers for everything you guys do. It's awesome. It's a long day. Liz does a great job of getting it organized. This was another example of that. And the boredom must have been overwhelming at times. And so you guys did a great job, so thank you. Thanks, Ellie.
All right, thank you, Jim. All right, if anyone else is here to speak, otherwise we will close the open forum and move on to new business. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming this evening. All right, for new business tonight, we have the opening of the fall 2023 town meeting warrant. Jim, do you have anything to add to this?
No, just note that right now we have just about 17 articles as placeholders. And I had this on the TA update, so I'll just take it from there. Pat and I are going to need some direction from the select board regarding the in-law apartment bylaw. Is it something that the board wants to bring back? It was something that we went back and forth with FinCom on that one, and I don't need an answer now, but I will sometime this summer before the warrant closes. Is it something the board wants to put forward again? We can clean it up. I know Jim and Patrick worked on it, so just let us know. And I could probably take the language on the charter and see what we had when we did the finance director 4 or 5 years ago, and maybe use that. That didn't require us to go to an election. There was a process that we had to follow. It has to go through the legislature. That takes a considerable amount of time. So it's not something that can happen in 6 months. It'd be great if it could happen in a year, but it's something I'll base the warrant article on that, and the board can look it over.
Good.
I think that would be helpful. It is important to think about. 9% should not be there.
Yeah.
So, all right, Ben, do I have a motion for?
Make a motion to open the fall 2023 town meeting warrant and close it on August 22nd, 2023.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 5-0. All right, the next order of business is a vote for a block party.
Motion to request of Todd Lyman for a block party on Lady Slipper Drive on October 1st, 2023 from 1 to 5 p.m.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have another vote of 5-0. And then a motion for stadium event parking. Eve, I feel like at our last meeting you spoke that we have now set a firm date for next year.
Yes, so this is a new application.
A new applicant, okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right, Ben, do I have a motion for this?
Motion to approve stadium event parking lot license at 1925 Washington Street with 7 spaces.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Vote 5-0. And now we can move on to the consent agenda.
Motion to accept with gratitude the following donations: Jane Sullivan in memory of Russell Olson to COA Gifts, Marianne Collins to Ambulance Gift Account, Rosemarie Doherty to COA Gifts, COA Pool Players to COA Gifts, the family of Edith Noyes to COA Gifts, and various donors to Night Before the 4th.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Vote 5-0. And we have minutes.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of May 9th and May 23rd, 2023, as presented in our packet.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a vote 5-0. And an update from our town administrator.
Sure, just a couple of items here. Capital budget requests are due in next week. Once we have a list together, I'll share it with the board, and if members think something's missing or needs to be adjusted, please feel free to let me know. We have plenty of time. Yeah, we don't expect free cash to be certified until very late July or August at some time. We mentioned the warrant. Town offices will be closed June 19th and up in recognition of Juneteenth. The Old Town Hall, Superintendent Goff approached me about a week ago, or maybe a little bit more. We took a tour through that building. She'd like to move forward with moving the Coordinated Family and Community Engagement Network offices over to that building. This is something I mentioned to the board, I think, a few weeks ago. She mentioned there's some growing demands on their special education and programming that have required them to move the educational spaces at Elm School to accommodate the needs of the students. So as a result, there's no longer space available at the Elm Street School for this particular department. So I don't see any issue with it. Dawn Anderson and I went through there. They think they're gonna use up to about 3 officers. The meeting space over there is still fine. Trish Fisher, our town nurse, uses it for her clinics. Both the 2nd and 3rd floor have space available if they need to have some bigger meetings. The former chief's office is going to be a fine office for this community engagement network. So we don't really see any issues. Don walked through there. He is going to rip up the rug. It's kind of old and nasty, but and probably put some fresh paint up there. But that's really it in the immediate near future that we need to do for there. So if the board has no issue, I'm going to tell Bridget to go ahead and let's make it happen so we free up the space over the summer. Okay.
Yep.
Good.
If you're not aware of that program, it's a grant that's longstanding. It's gone through a few name changes. Yvette Smarka does a great job running that grant and the community engagement. And it services Walpole and all of Charles, kind of the Charles River, so Millis, Medway, Medfield, Dover, and Sherburne. But it's housed, the grant is housed through the Department of Walpole Public Schools. So I'm glad to see that we have a spot for them. And I know Elm Street School is tight, and I know they need more spaces for special education services. So it's nice to have use for that building and fix a problem.
It is.
So.
Last item here, the prison, MCI Cedar Junction. We got word about a week and a half ago that the prisoners are going to be completely moved out by the end of June, which is about a year ahead of schedule. And I'm working with Senator Rush's office to coordinate a meeting with the delegation to review what's next and what our options are. I know Jim and Ally, as the chair and former chair, have said they'd be willing to sit in on that meeting, and we'll likely report back when something gets set up. They'd like us to come into Boston so we can meet as a group, and we're just figuring out the dates on that one.
Great.
That's it.
All right, anything else from anyone on the board? All right, then I think that concludes our agenda for this evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a vote, 5-0. Thank you, everyone.
All right, business.